casting and VO on another title with Modus Games called Chris Tales. So, because of that, some of the people knew that, I did that kind of work and said, "Hey, we have this other really cool game called Ari and the Secret of Seasons." And I looked at the trailer and was just blown away. Like the visuals and, everything about it just seemed so cool. And so they sent me some kind of like breakdowns of the different characters that they needed to find voices for and kind of took it from there. And with some of the characters, I was like, okay, I think like this person would be really good for this role, which is what happened with the role of Ari. And then with other characters, I was kind of like, well, I don't really have a specific person in mind, so I'm going to audition people I know. And for example, that is how Chris ended up getting the role of Prince Crocus, because I actually knew Chris going back to like 2004. Like it's been a really long time, although, fell out of contact over many years. But, he was on my email list for like, okay, I'm going to, audition. And from there, I kind of narrowed it down to here's like the top 5 people that I like for this role. And then the team kind of picked from there who they wanted.
And Casey, you said that you were able to have a part of the process with casting and directing as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've helped out a little bit with casting directing with projects here and there. I mostly do VO, but I'm happy to help out and just do what I can, especially for projects that look so cool like this. So we kind of just went through auditions together, and it's like, well, yeah, sure, let's take a look. And it kind of became like oh, actually, yeah, I like that read. And I just kind of became more involved as I heard the script because it was just kind of like a thing that was like, oh, I'm doing this game. And I'm like, well, let's check it out. Let's see what we got. And I just love the script and what the characters were like saying. And I'm like, what is this game? This is so cool. And I looked it up and I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, and it's hard not to just get so involved with it because the writing was really good. Kudos to you. and,
Yeah.
and it just kind of sucked me into it. Like, whoa, this is really, really cool. And we just kind of went over everything. And I'm like, okay, I just want to help out with this because it just looks so cool and it sounds so neat. It's just very different. Um, so yeah, so we just went through a lot of auditions together and kind of like looked at each character and just said, "Ooh, I have an idea. What do you think about this actor? Let's get this one to read for the." It's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." And we got auditions back and we just go through it and it was just really exciting because the writing was so good.
Oh,
Um,
that's so awesome to hear. I'm watching the
yeah.
video play of they're showing well, all of you can see they're showing parts
Yeah.
of Ari streaming. And when I first played that winter mechanic and I got to see those ice platforms, burst
Yeah.
into life on the build, I like you, I was hooked with the world and the visuals and the setting. And when I first started working with Sebastian Latouze and he described all of the art styles and how everything was set up already, and then the opportunity to, like you said, bring the story, bring those characterizations to the page, there was so much blue sky opportunity that we were really able to evolve the characters, evolve the story, mold it from the locked things that they had that couldn't be changed, if that makes sense for all you
Yeah.
game
Yeah. Yep.
developers
Yep.
out there. You know that you come onto the project, there are certain things that are locked and can't be changed, but we can kind of puzzle piece together lore and story opportunities into that mold. So it was really cool that you mentioned that, so thank you very
Yeah.
much.
No,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
definitely props to you on the script because, as from a voice acting perspective, sometimes we get scripts that, aren't written so well.
Oh,
And it's really a
yes.
challenge as an actor when you have one of those to try to interpret it and make it sound natural and realistic like people talk. But with Ari, it was like all those pieces were already in place.
Well,
So,
everything was already done. The script was already, it looked, I mean, compared to a lot of the things that we work on here in LA, sometimes we get things as raw script, or it's just, it's sometimes it's something that is strictly translated without any editing, or it hasn't been edited yet. So usually, especially for casting and directing something, we're working with a script that is just not final or makes no sense. So when we're looking at the script, I'm like, this is already edited and it kind of seems like it's ready to go. That's pretty Gucci. That makes everything a lot easier for us. And that's what sucked us into it more. It was like, this is so cool. And I remember checking out the trailer, and I remember when the demo came out on Steam too. I downloaded it and I saw the animations, and I'm like, this is like a Disney movie or like a Pixar movie. The
Yes.
animations are amazing.
Mhm.
The music is phenomenal. and the story is just so cool. And I'm like, this is like a little hidden gem. Like it's something that I was really kind of blown away at the quality of everything
Oh, I
playing it.
remember at E3, I don't know what year it was, but back when we still had conventions in person. What
Oh,
year
this
was
is
that?
the
What
days.
year are
Feels
we
so
in?
long.
How long ago
Back
was
in my
this?
day.
But I would sit down. I remember sitting down with Modus and Exon at E3, and they talked about the rough drafts, like you're saying, of the cutscenes that were in place,
Mhm.
and what we could do to bring a heartfelt story of not only togetherness, but like you said, it based in Europe, like a European culture influence. So I really held on to that, and I wanted to keep the vision of what Seb had for the story in place, but then add to that real life experiences that we all feel, being isolated, being alone, pouring that into Ari where she could bind with family, bind with her values, her integrity, her will to push on even when she's going against tradition. That's where I rooted being brought on as the lead writer. I said, okay, I have to stay with the voice that Sebastian really wanted originally.
Mhm.
And I'm really glad that that came through, because it was a labor of love. It was a lot of hard work to puzzle piece it together. So thank you very much. And you're making me all a blush. I'm so excited.
Oh
But
no,
Aw.
that's good. You deserve so much praise for this because I'm still playing it. I haven't finished yet. But as I keep playing it, I'm like, this is just so cool. Like the story gets cooler and cooler. I'm like, this is really, really, really cool.
well,
Like it's
I
such a
don't take all
unique
the credit.
writing.
I had an amazing team that I worked with. It was
Oh
awesome working
yeah.
with Modus and Exton. But on that note, before I blush much more,
I was
Chris,
gonna add to it. I was gonna say the
oh,
same thing.
Chris,
No,
Chris,
because
please tell us about Prince Crocus and how that felt, bringing that to life from the page.
I mean, so a couple of years ago, so Ari was my first legitimate like video game role where I actually saw myself on the screen, heard myself for the first time, and that was awesome. I had auditioned years ago for another indie game called A Hat in Time, and I got a role in that game, but like with a lot of productions and video games, my part was cut out. So I did all the
Oh
recording, I
no.
did everything, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited for this. And I was like a sandworm or something. Like I had a very
Don't
like
cut the sandworm.
you don't cut
Come
the dude, but
on.
it was like he was like a surfer dude sandworm.
You don't
And
cut. That sounds
you
like the
can't-
amazing character.
I know.
and so they mentioned like, oh well, we're taking a different direction with this on their page, and they said, oh well, we're gonna get rid of the desert level, and I'm like, well, that's where a sand that's where a
No.
sand guy would be.
No.
So I was not in it, unfortunately. So Ari was the first real thing for me. And I'm a part of a lot of different like casting calls on Twitter, and Kira was one of them that I joined. And I know there's a story behind it, and I'm not sure exactly who in this group would know more about it, but I auditioned for every character that I could, just in the hopes that I would get it. And originally, apparently, I was talking to Seb about this. I was shot for Ronan, the messenger. I wasn't even shot for Crocus at first. Like I wasn't on the tier list basically for that. And Janice, I don't know if you got to be a part of those decisions or anything as well, of like, oh, well, we want to hear this person over this person, or what did this read sound like? And I just got super lucky that my British voice happens to be decent enough for the role of the prince. So that's how
I
I got
love your Crocus. Every time I see a scene with him, I'm like, I just without spoiling anything, it's just I love just how you delivered just like even the haircut line and kind of like the beginning ish. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
I like your haircut. Like just every little thing goes so well with the animation, and I'm just still blown away just how good and well presented this game is.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely. Well,
watching some
yeah.
streamers that when Prince Crocus first makes his first appearance,
Yeah.
I've heard quite the colorful comments like "oh boy" or "ooh" or
Right,
"who's
exactly.
this" or
It's
"oh
the
cocky"
wink he
or
does with it. Yeah.
and then I also read a review for a player that said that Crocus ended up being his favorite character, and he really was blown
Yes.
away with the evolution and the progression with how the story completely caught them off guard and didn't expect it to go where it went. And I'm gonna have to take this opportunity to ask anyone that doesn't want a spoiler to mute their mic or take off their take off their headphones or mute the computer, because I do want to ask just briefly about the ending of the game and the twists that we have. So I'm going to give a pause of 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I'm evil.
Okay. I love it. On that note, Kira, Casey, Chris, any of you can start off. But what was that like reading the page, knowing? Kira, let's start with you. The fact that you got to play Ari's mother voice acting, and then you got to play the older version of Ari.
Well, that was actually a really interesting surprise for me because, one of the things we had done originally was, of course, to read Ari's actress as well on Legendary Warrior, but her Cassandra's voice is very like youthful and energetic sounding, which is, one of the things that made her so unbelievably perfect for Ari. I could gush about that for days.
Yeah.
But when it came to her older, more mature form, it was, something that we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do with it. And I ended up submitting a read, and I was like, well, no pressure. This is just kind of, one option. I'm happy to audition this role with actresses I know or whatever, but they ended up liking it, which I was actually very surprised about, because I kind of thought like, I'll submit it just in case, but I don't think they're going to go with it. And then they did. So that was kind of a nice surprise.
For sure. I feel like it for all of the gamers I've been watching, they assume, incorrectly who the evil mage is going to be and the legendary warrior going to be, which is good. That's what we want, right? We want that surprise twist. We want that feeling of like, no way. And so I thought it was really powerful to see Ari, a flash forward of Ari in this like very empowered, evolved state. Did you feel that delivering those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things that's like, oh, and, also playing her mother, of course, when, she's like, oh, you're going to be all grown up and all this kind of stuff. And then to actually kind of realize that it's so cool,
And as a mom, I gotta gush a little bit. As a mom, I loved that that Kalena had this moment of realizing that she needs to see her daughter as the already equipped little girl that she is, instead of trying to protect her and hold on because of that grief that she's going through from her missing son. So even as a mother, I have to remind myself to let go. I have a 5-year-old who's almost 6, and she has this fierce, opinionated independence about her already that I have.
You got a little Ari.
Yes,
seriously.
I do. In fact, I wrote several moments of Ari inspired by Cora, my daughter, and so I love that moment that even as I watch streamers, when they see the mother bend down and have that moment with Ari when she leaves Yule, we all expect it to be like, uh-oh, she's in trouble, little girl sneaking out the city. But to have that moment of her mother realizing like, okay, I'm gonna hug her instead. Like, I still get goosebumps thanks to Marcus Hedges with his amazing composed music. Go ahead, Casey.
No, that scene, because I played it a little bit on the Switch, I played it on the PS4, I played the demo. Every time I play that scene, I'm like, oh my God, because you first expect, oh gosh, back to the start of the game, she's going to send you back home. But that whole scene and Kira's delivery for the mom was just like, oh my gosh. Ooh, that's a turning point that I wasn't super expecting. And it gave me goosebumps too. It was very well done.
Thank you. Chris, can you describe what it was like having to play one character, but surprise,
right.
Everyone thinks it's 2 characters.
I've been bad all along. So it was very interesting because I had a lot of questions for Seb and the development team on exactly how to play that, because you don't want to give too much away, right? So when I was doing the voice for the Evil Mage, it is Prince Crocus, but obviously dialed down a lot, very serious, very almost just like he's very little Ari, like, it gets down a tone or two. But I was like, do you want me to still sound like Prince Crocus, or do you want me to do like this mangled voice? They're like, no, just pretend like you've been asleep for 1,000 years and that you're just kind of, you hate everybody. It's like, oh, okay, I can handle that. But that that was really interesting. And I was like, do I want to try and trick people and do a different accent? So those kind of development decisions were really fun to kind of go back and forth with. But ultimately, the twist in the end, that I loved the scene with Ari and her mother. That was one of my favorite. It was like exactly like you said, just like the come on, like I've already been playing this, and then it turns and it's great. But then the redemption arc for Prince Crocus in the end, that was one of my favorite bits too. Basically, like he's looking at his future self and looking back at the same times of the things that he just did. That was so well written and so fun to act out. At the same time, you did an awesome job with that. The whole team did amazing of just that entire presentation and that lead up and that twist. Because I definitely wasn't expecting it, and I was reading for it. So,
and if you go back and play it again, I love that you can see it gradually. He's gradually affected, and you can see this progression of him maturing as a character and embracing, like you said, what he decides to take on as his own. I have to pay for my own actions. Like it's. We have some amazing questions coming in live from our audience. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your questions. Chris, on this note, we have a question that says, what was it like watching or playing the game for the first time and hearing your character voiced? And you did a fantastic job, by the way, it says.
Thank you. It's very surreal. It really is. I'm sure once you do it over and over again and you see yourself, depending on like how close you are to the project, maybe that feeling dies down. But for me, it was like, I got it on PS4 at first, and then Steam and everything later. I had to get it on everything just because I wanted like a physical copy of it as well.
Oh,
I'm the same way.
Guys,
you got the collection.
Guys, how do I show this to you?
Oh, geez.
Is
I
that
can't
all of
do
it?
I don't know how to do it with my virtual background. Somebody help me.
Is that for
There we go.
every
you got the every iteration. That's awesome. But it was absolutely surreal. It's one of those things where especially because you do the lines, so eventually like my character's coming up, but I don't know when they're gonna be here. So the demo came out, and Seb told me, he's like, oh yeah, you're in the demo. I was like, what? Just like frantically going to download it. And I was really waiting for a streamer or anybody to have that recording so I could just like have that, because that was the first experience when you're meeting Prince Crocus. He gets hit in the head with a rock, and he's just trying to be super suave about accidentally running over a child, like. So it was really cool. It made me feel really, really awesome.
Thank you, Jeannie, for that question. That was awesome. Okay, for Kira, we have, as a proficient anime voice actor, what do you see as the major differences between anime and video game acting?
Well, the biggest thing in terms of technicalities is that for anime or any kind of foreign dubbing, you're matching animation that's already there, already been animated. It's obviously very strict timing, because you're not only bound by having to match the exact timing, but also the original performance. So what was different with something like Ari is because we were the first voices and everything, it's like I get to kind of read that script and imagine it in my head and then portray it kind of how, based on the direction given, and also kind of how I think the character would act, like for someone like Kalena, for example, I wanted to show that she was strict, but not like too strict. And it was like she's strict because she cares so much about Ari and she doesn't want to lose another child. So, kind of portraying all those things. But when you're just localizing, a lot of times you're really bound by the original performance and the original animation. So something that was so cool about this was like seeing the cut scenes animated and everything with our lines that we recorded, because that's, as someone who works in a lot of localized media, that's not something I get often.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Graham, for that question. We have another question for Casey. Casey, have you played the pirate game called Sea of Thieves, or is there a game out there you would compare Ari to?
I have never played Sea of Thieves. I wanted to. I was going to play it with my friend who's also a voice actor, Kyle McCarley, but I guess there's some cross-platform things. So I almost got it physically. If you buy it physically, you can't play with PC players. So I said, oh, never mind. I have to have physical or bust. So I don't know what other kind of game I would compare Ari to.
I saw some Zelda moments in it when
Yeah,
I was
that's the
playing
Yeah.
it. I thought
closest
that
thing
was
I can
really
think
cool.
Absolutely.
of, but it's still very different from a Zelda game. Um, and I don't know, that I think that's what drew me to the game so much. It's what made me play it so much, was the environment is very, you can really adjust it as you see fit, using, like, as you see in the video, like the winter spheres, and you could make platforms appear, and you have to figure out where they might be and make them appear based on what's in the environment and like what season sphere you use. So I think that's really neat, and I haven't really seen that done. It's like a constant puzzle and a platformer. So uh, I don't know if I can compare it to anything. Maybe closest thing is maybe Zelda, but I haven't really played anything quite like it myself, which is what makes me keep going back to playing it. Uh, yeah,
For sure, for sure. And thank you, Wilson. Shout out for that question. But
yeah.
to add to that, Casey, I agree. I think it's really amazing that the programmers, the artists, the designers, the whole
Mhm.
team, Maximum Games, Modus Games, Exit. I'm trying to, I got to shout out to everybody,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
fishing cactus that worked on it, because I too haven't seen a game where you feel like the whole environment was meticulously formed to be able to transform, winter, spring, summer, fall, wherever you go, where you can see that level of detail in the environment and feel like you're immersed and you're controlling it and you're wielding it and you're powerful. I
Yeah.
love it. And the
The
music too.
backgrounds are so, the music, it changes no matter what type of location you're in. So I play a lot of games. So like you're watching the bit right now, or we just had like with the greenery, it reminds me of something like Uncharted. The winter stuff, I feel like I'm playing a little bit of Skyrim. And with everything else, I'm like, the environment feels, oh, this could be like Spyro the Dragon or Crash Bandicoot. I have all these
Mhm.
different vibes, and that's what makes me so like, oh, this is such a cool world.
We need to
It's a
have
mishmash.
Yeah, we need to have a panel, Wizworld, if we may request, with Marcus Hedges, right? We need to have the composer
Yes.
on. We need to
Yes,
talk to him about
yes.
his
As
inspiration.
soon as it came out on Spotify and Apple Music, I immediately downloaded it and I was just listening
Me
to all the
too.
different tracks in the car. It's just like every track, whether it's like the like Summer Village or Yule, or it always makes you feel
Mm,
something different. Like every
Sebastian,
it
single
does.
track is amazing.
Sebastian Latou's, shout out to him. He sent me a snippet of the summer whale golem music from Marcus while we were in development so that I could write that quest, listening to the music that would
Ah,
Oh,
that's
punctuate
nice.
that
awesome.
moment.
Oh,
And
so
so
cool.
I was writing, and Seb had requested that. He said, Janice, if we could make this quest one of our more like sadness, really. He said, can you embed some sadness into this quest? I want this whale to be, she's isolated in this small pool of water. He sent me a screenshot of what it looked like, and I was able to listen to the music while writing to that, and it really helped. And I cry a little bit when gamers that are like fast playing gamers that don't really read the story, that like skip through it. I cry a little bit. I'm like, wait,
Oh, yeah,
Speedrunners,
they're
yeah.
speed running through it.
I'm
Like,
like,
I don't
wait, you're
care about
missing.
this whale.
Yeah, exactly. But I just cheers to everyone, because that's my favorite soundtrack. That's my favorite moment, my favorite music moment, and my favorite quest that I wrote too. So thank you again for that question out there in the e-verse, internet verse. We have another one from Aaron. Casey, you mentioned the style of the game, the platformer style, and this question is for all of you. Do you have a favorite video game style? Is platformer one of your favorites, or do you have other style of games that you prefer to play?
Ooh.
So it's a good one, right? Because there's so
Oh,
many
Yeah.
man.
games out there. It's like, how do I decide? It's like asking what kind of
I
novels, sci-fi,
I
fantasy.
do
How do you
Yeah.
decide?
enjoy a good platformer. Like Ari kept me. It's a relatively short game in the scope of a lot of, like, of course, like the AAA titles and everything, but I was playing through it and I forgot. I think it's the Spring Temple that got me hooked, because one of the things that I really like about Ari in particular, and the fact that you can use the season spheres, is that you know exactly what elements of the puzzle are there, right? So like, spring does this, summer does this, winter does this, and they give you the tools, and you just have to figure out based off of that how to proceed, how to get this orb from over here. There's a gap of water and you can't go in the water with the
There's
orb.
some
Like,
hard ones. Like
there really are.
Yes, there
And
are.
I love that. Like the most I could say about like the game itself is it is a combination. It reminded me of Zelda a lot, and Zelda's one of my favorite series, as you could probably see back there. There's a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
Triforce stuff there back there. But two of my favorite games are the Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons, which were on the Game Boy Color, I think. And this game kind of incorporated both time and seasons into it, but did it in a 3D environment and did it very instantaneously. I can't imagine the programming that goes into like rendering 4 different worlds at the same time of spring, summer, winter, and everything. So yes, the platforming is fun for me.
And the level of difficulty, I kind of teased Seb a little bit because we didn't have we wanted more opportunity to inject story, of course, and lore always, but with our limited availability for being able to do that, we were able to inject a lot of the story in the Equinox letters. And
Yeah.
I teased Seb a little bit. I'm like, are they too hard to get? Like, I really want gamers to be able to get, that core amount of the story. The landmark tablets and the letters are so essential if you want to get more of the lore. But I don't know. I don't know what the judgment is out on that. But
It's
I
like
think
for the
it's a little
hardcore
hard.
people, they really get the true ending basically of the game.
So
'Cause
all
I
you
was-
out there, please try to get the letters.
yes, try to get
even
them
if
all.
They're hard.
Because Seb was talking to me about way after, like pretty much like a couple of months ago, he mentioned it to me. He's like, "Oh, like the lore behind Prince Crocus and his parents, right?" I was like, "No, what happened with all that?" And he just like laid it out. I'm like, "You guys went so in depth. Like, I can't imagine that there's just like a world of Valdi book just
We
like
need a sequel because we have a
Yes.
wiki, we have a lore doc, like hundreds
wow.
of pages long. There's
Yeah.
so much in there, everyone, that I want to get out. Real quick, before we run out of time, there's another question. Kira, there's this question's for you. What is the dynamic like between voice actor and writer? Is there much give and take and interaction collaboration during the casting process and recording process and all of that?
Well, a lot of my conversations were because I never got to interact with you or with the developers directly. So a lot of my communication was done through the producers on the project at the time, and so there's a lot of kind of back and forth. Sometimes I would pitch like, "Hey, I think this person would be really cool for this role or whatever," and then we kind of like wait to hear back, or maybe have them submit another read or something like that. So it was a lot of kind of waiting to get feedback from different people involved, like especially with the casting of a character like Ari, who the players are going to hear so often. That was one that I was told this is really important to get right, obviously. And I had just done an event with Cassandra, and she's so busy. She's working all the time on these really cool projects. So I was like, I don't know if you'd have time to read for an indie game, but this one looks really, really cool. And you should. And she's like, yeah, send me the stuff. So I had her audition, and they, sent a few notes for feedback and stuff like that. And I was really excited when they did end up going with her because I felt like she was really just the perfect choice to bring out
for
Ari's
sure.
personality.
absolutely.
Chris, we have a request that you give us a line as Prince Crocus.
Oh God, which one? Let's see. I like just the initial one where it's just like, "Little Ariel, apologies for the rush. Must be going." Like, it's just so fun to be that
I love
over
it.
dramatic. Like,
I remember that was one of your audition lines too.
oh yeah, absolutely. Like doing that, and then just like all of the. Are we done spoiling? Did the spoiler people come back? The Prince Crocus lines later on in the game, I also really enjoyed doing.
Absolutely.
I won't spoil the rest of that then if people came back for that though. So yes, it was a lot of like sweating afterwards because I'm moving so much, but he's staying stagnant and still.
That's a good way to describe it.